This video is sponsored by Keeps.
Time has finally come to do and redesign the front end of the Mazda RX-7. I did the redesign of the rear, I think it was about a year ago, and I really liked the way that turned out. And I waited so long to do the Mazda RX-7 because I didn't really know what to do with this if I want to turn it into a 2022 model. So in this video, we're gonna do the same kind of challenge within the rear, but this time we're gonna focus on the front end and see how we can mold this and resculpture the front end and the proportions of this to make it look like a bit more modern, a modern RX-7 that could be built in 2022. So first of all, let's have a look at all the generations here. When the FD version came out, the one we're going to talk about today, it was such a cool period for JDM cars. You had the Supra, you had the Nissan GTR Skyline, and you have the RX-7. You have a bunch of these cool cars that are almost like legendary status today. So it started in 1984 with this beauty right here. I think this is my favorite RX-7 because I like the way this is chiseled here in the front end. 1984, this was at the very end before the cars started to build down their front ends to reduce the lift tendency that these kind of cars have. It's kind of at the very end before they implemented some drastic changes to the front end of the cars, and I really like this chisel end that we have in the front end here. And of course we have the pop-up headlights right here. Very clean design. It looks like a super fun car to drive just by looking at this design. And then he went into 1991 when the convertible came out. You can see this is turbo right there. I love these stickers from this time period as well. This specific example looks like it's in mint condition. What I like about this design, same kind of thing as the original, but as you can see, we're starting to get this less chiseled front face here, but we still have a pretty sharp ending of the front fascia, and that's something that I want to keep in the redesign when we go into this. We also have a cool air intake right there in the hood, and I'm not really a fan of the convertible look of the RX-7. I think making it into a convertible is kind of like compromising the sportiness and the chassis stiffness of this. So you have a driver-focused car that might be a little bit more wobbly if you have a roof right here. That's just my point of view. It probably is a cool cruiser car, not as sporty as if it were to have a roof on there. I kind of like these wheels as well. I'm not sure if these are original, but they look period correct for the early 90s. And then we go into the FD. This has to be maybe the best looking RX-7. And you can see that we still have the pop-up headlights here, which of course we can't have today if we're gonna modernize this, since they are illegal to have. So I know a lot of you would love to see a brand new Mazda RX-7 with pop-up headlights, but I'm sorry, we can't do that. It's against regulations, so we're gonna have to figure out something else. And we get that inspiration from the RX-8. But as you can see, I don't think the RX-8 is in the same league as the rest of the lineup here. It just lacks something. It feels like more of a normal car than the previous RX-7s. I know it's not called an RX-7, but if you have RX-7 and then you come up with an RX-8, it kind of feels natural that that should be the successor to the RX-7 right here. But at the same time, spiritually, it doesn't feel like it has any connection to the FD RX-7 right here. This feels like a tamer car, a little bit more boring than the rest of the lineup. But as you can see, what they had to change here is the pop-up headlight, so we can't have that on the RX-8 here. So they implemented the headlight into the front end like this and have it be a static piece. But what's continuous throughout this lineup right here, and what I want to keep in this redesign, is that we have the chiseled front end here. The nose is kind of very hard ending, and it has a sharp line in the middle right there, except for the FD RX-7. That's the one we're actually going to redesign. Then we went into, of course, it's the mid-90s. It's Japanese cars. It was a global trend of the time, but you know what happened there. You can see it right here. This piece will have to be the symbolization of the melted cheese era right there. And you can see that there's a lot of smoothness going on everywhere in this design. There's not one single sharp line in this body. And this is a good example of a melted cheese design. So let's have a look at the example we're actually going to be working on right here. So this is the one I'm going to redesign. And I think it looks really cool in yellow, actually. I know yellow maybe not the favorite color of a lot of people, but I think the RX-7 here looks looks really cool in yellow. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna have to remove all these pieces right here, these 90s graphics. But as you can see in the front end here, we have these intakes. We have two intakes on the side, one intake in the middle. Same thing on the 1992 version, same thing in the 1991 version, and all the way back to the original, which has some intakes down here, very small ones, but it still has a big intake in the middle and two small ones on the sides. So that's what I want to keep down here, but modernize this shape a little bit as well. And you see the pop-up headlights here. I want to take inspiration from the RX-8 down here. Maybe not have the exact same shape, but we're gonna have to have some lights in here that are fixed to the body, and remove the pop-up headlights, and also probably remove those lights right there. So when it comes to the proportions here, this is typical 90s proportions. I think the RX-7 looks really good. It looks super nimble, and comparing it to the Supra, this looks like a 100-meter sprinter, while the Supra looks almost like a bodybuilder. It feels a lot more massive and muscular, while this feels a lot more nimble compared to the Supra. But what I want to have a look at here is the proportions here. So let's have a look at the total height of the RX-7. You see that we have the greenhouse being about 40% of the height here and 60 down here. I want to move that, play around with that even more. So we have the shorter greenhouse right here. Bring this roofline down just a little bit, have it be a little more sloping in the rear end to make it look sportier than what it is right here. And on top of that, remove the melted cheese. We need to bring back a little bit of some sharpness in this design. For example, I want to raise up the rear fender like this a little bit, and also do something similar right here in the front end. So with that said, let's see how this redesign is going to turn out. But before we do that, I want to take a minute to thank today's sponsor, Keeps. Keeps is a subscription service that helps men keep their hair by offering clinically proven treatments to fight the symptoms of hair loss. And it's affordable too. It's typically half the price of what a regular traditional pharmacy would charge. The results, they speak for themselves, with most customers seeing great results within about 6 months of starting the treatment. And guess what? You don't even have to leave your house. Keeps make it simple by delivering all doctor recommended treatments straight to your door. And if you don't know what plan to go with, no worries. Keep physicians will help you select the right products and treatments for your specific condition and hair goals. Hair loss stops with Keeps. To get 50% off your first order, go to keeps.com/sketchmonkey, or simply click the link down in the description. That's keeps.com/sketchmonkey to get 50% off your first order. Thanks to Keeps for sponsoring this video. Now let's continue and redesign the front end of the RX-7. So the Mazda RX-7 is a front mid-engine rear-wheel drive rotary engine powered sports car that was manufactured by Mazda from 1978 to 2002 across 3 generations. And these 3 generations are called, the first one is called the RX-7 SA, the second one is called the FC, and the third and last final generation is called the FD, and all of these were a 2-seater coupe, except for the first one, which was a hatchback coupe. And in this redesign, we're going to focus on the third generation called the FD. And this car was the first ever mass-produced sequential twin turbocharger system to be exported from Japan, and it had a power of 255 horsepower in 1993 and finally 276 horsepower by the end of production in 2002. And one of the key designers for the FD RX-7 was also a key designer for the MX-5 Miata, and he was a Taiwanese automotive artist that worked on this instead of a traditional car designer. He worked in collaboration with the designers to add some artsiness to this design. The handling in the FD was regarded as world-class, and it's still regarded as being one of the finest handling and best balanced cars of all time, and it won numerous awards including Motor Trend's Import Car of the Year. And the reason for this great handling was the use of the front midship engine and drivetrain layout in combination with the 50-50 weight distribution and a low center of gravity, and this made the FD a very competent car at the limits and also on the track. Although production ended in 2002, there was a couple of concepts that was hinting that Mazda was coming back with an RX-7. For example, the RX Vision concept car from 2015. But the proper successor to the RX-7 is the RX-8, which in my opinion doesn't feel nearly as special as an FD RX-7. I don't know what it is about the RX-8. It just feels like it's lacked that soul that the RX-7 had, and it feels more like a just mass-produced Mazda than something special. And to me, that's exactly what I want to try and capture with the redesign. I want it to be instantly recognizable as an FD RX-7, but at the same time be a modern version of the original one. So that means that we need to work on the body line and the creases on this car, and also remove that melted cheese that we have all around the cars, even in the B pillar here. I want to tighten that up a little bit, and also the greenhouse itself on the RX-7, the FD version. It's almost like it looks like a bubble almost, and that's a signature design piece that I think the FD has, and that's something that I want to keep. But at the same time, if we have a bubbly greenhouse and remove all the melted cheese, it's going to clash a little bit. So you have to have a nice balance between the softness and the organic curvatures of the RX-7 FD at the same time as you're modernizing it and turning it into something new. So another key point that I wanted to add to the design is to bring it lower to the ground, because it sits pretty high for a 2021 sports car, and we can use some pieces, bits and pieces, to build up the bottom part of the car without adding mass to the graphic features and the visual appeal of the RX-7, and that is by using black pieces that it is in stark contrast with the, of course, yellow paint of the car. Because if we have black pieces, they're sort of going to melt away in the background. If you look at this from a side view, you're only going to be struck by the yellow paint, and you're not really going to see the black pieces as part of the body. So it's still going to look very slim, even though we are increasing the height of the car, or the body mass of the car, by adding these pieces in the bottom. So we're coming to an end of this redesign right here. I had a lot of fun redesigning the RX-7. I've now done both the rear view and the front view. I'm going to show both of them up here at the end of this video, and I think it would be so cool to see Mazda come back with something like this. It doesn't have to be a crazy looking design, something that really captures the FD RX-7 design with some modern touches applied to it. And since it's such a timeless design when it comes to the styling and the proportions, I think this would actually work as a 2022 model. But that's it for this video. Thanks again to Keeps for sponsoring this video. Click the link in the description or go to keeps.com/sketchmonkey to get 50% off your first order. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.